It is Behind the Scenes with Jess and Scott. Behind the scenes of what, you ask? The Bold Business Podcast. So, Scott and I have decided that we are going to use some clips from past programs and we're going to talk about them. Are they relevant today? If so, how are they relevant today? If not, why not? And the thing is, it's interactive. So you're in the queue, you're watching us live. We want to hear from you as well. And Scott, will you explain how this wheel works?
I would be happy to. First of all, we have over 250 programs that we've done over the last 3 seasons of the Bold Business Podcast. And from that, from all of those, we've selected a few segments that are, really especially poignant. And they were just kind of sitting there. So you and I decided that we would take those. And I would choose, actually, what I did was I chose them at random because every one of them had something to recommend themselves. And we put them in a wheel of fortune. And I think I can even show the wheel right now briefly. So we'll go to that wheel, and you don't know what those clips are. And we're down to five guests that we've had in the past. You
Okay.
will see you will see the clip for the very first time and respond
Mm-hmm.
to it. And then you'll humor me by letting me say a few things as well.
And what's the purpose today? The purpose today is not only be humored, which I like, Scott. I think that's fantastic. The purpose is to really show up in our business right now, to understand what we're doing. As in the US, we're right before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays. Not only does it connect the beginning of fall to the middle of winter, it is also a time where we get to remember where we're from, what we're grateful for, and whatever we're doing for the holiday, it is probably different than what we have done for the Thanksgiving holiday in the past. And I want to honor that truth in our business as well. What we have done is probably different than what we are doing right now. And and to just be really good people, to understand exactly where we are and to continue to make those ripples forward is what we're all about today.
Absolutely. Are you ready to go with the first one?
Let's go. Let's go. Woo, 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 woo. Jade. Oh, yeah. Okay. So Jade and I met the first time we met. I was at this networking event and she was a speaker and she started talking about video. And it was after I had moved to Colorado. So Scott and I were old hat at all of this video stuff. And and I'm listening and I'm listening. And by the way, she had some great tips for us as far as she was talking about photography at the time and how the things that we do for photography could actually impact the way we set up our set. And so I took some of that stuff back, and Scott and I actually improved the Jess Plus Scott show from that experience. Now, Jade is a videographer, and in Colorado, she is my go-to videographer. Any event that I do live, any footage that I need to have in a physical space, she is there with her cameras and her crew. So not only is she a videographer and good at what she does, she is an impeccable business owner that wants to grow her business and has a lot to share about her experiences along the way. Now let's see what she said that I don't even know what she's going to say yet.
Well, I like to think that starting our own is bold. And I think the current census that I saw was out of the entire population of the United States, 13.3% of people are entrepreneurs with 500 employees or less. We're 13% of such a small scale. And then to be bold on top of that makes us an even tinier percentage. But that just do you, which by the way was Carrie Knudsen, want to make sure that everyone knows that. That just do you mentality means that I'm going to be me. I'm going to provide the service and I'm going to find the perfect fit for them and I. So that way we can have this backbone of America of this 13.3% of us just being awesome and being willing to take that jump in the first place. And then to be willing to make this business do your business and then do these bold crazy things of, go out and do a kayaking trip, or fit into a box, or write copy that no one else is brave enough or even thought to write. Those are, you have to think of yourself as being bold within a bold group.
And sometimes I say those bold questions and people look at me like, what do you mean? Why is it bold? I'm the expert in what I do, or I've told you this whole program why we should be doing this right now. And then you ask me if it's bold, I'm confused. And Jade handled that very well. I like the stats that she shared. I have no idea if they're the stats today. What I do have an idea of is that it is bold, and it's bolder than ever before to have this concept of being in business for yourself. Yes, small businesses are the backbone of this company. Yes, resilience is necessary. Yes, we don't know how to prioritize as small businesses. Yes, sometimes we need to discern what is actually important versus what we think is important to get us to our goals. And therein lies, to add to what Jade was saying and how it's bold today, we always have to be discerning. We have to be ready to shift. And most importantly, we must be willing to be open. We must be willing to ask the questions and acknowledge exactly where we're at so we know where we want to go forward, and it's the path that we have. So, all right, Scott, I want to hear what this brought up for you.
Well, I thank you. I keyed in at the very beginning when she was talking about entrepreneurs, and I was reminded of the current Bold Business podcast that we have when Bart Rupert talked about how some people who have had that inkling of maybe wanting to become an entrepreneur, and because of everything that's happening in the economy nowadays, they've thought this is the time to move. There are others who are thinking maybe I should sell my business, but there's another group that are saying, well, maybe this is the time I should buy a business. And he had just so many insights on that.
Yes, Bart Rupert did. That's the interplay of positioning and growth. That podcast. That is our newest podcast as of the time that we're doing this live stream. And to your point, Scott, I think that's important. Growth happens two ways. Bart talks about inorganic growth. A lot of what our business owners talk about that we're interviewing, and a lot of the experience I have is organic growth. So I'm lucky enough to have inorganic growth, buying and selling companies, as well as organic growth. But I know many of us fall into one or the other. And for whatever reason, that space between our ears has this thing that says, hey, something's in my way. And I love what you said about that, in the sense that, well, why not? Why not look at some other option? Maybe there's something here for me this way that is actually maybe a little scary, but much more aligned with what I'm thinking I want, what I feel that I want, and the risk I'm willing to take to get what I want.
Yeah, we were talking about that in the green room, and Bart used the analogy of a cube, and we can have a smaller cube or we can have a larger cube. Sometimes the difference between the two isn't at all more work. It's exactly the same amount of work and effort and stress and all of those other sorts of things to accommodate a larger cube, being more robust in ways. But the difference between the two is, as you were saying, something that's between your head. And in the green room, we were talking about. I was saying, well, being a graybeard, and that is an expression of endearment. Were I to go back to being in those formative years, in that empire building stage of my life, boy, to have a different perspective, to have a different point of view that would allow me to go from the smaller cube to a larger cube might have made all the difference in the world. Now, I had some of those revelations, so it's not a life of regret, but it's something that everybody has to go through. It's just part of the human condition.
It's true. I'm going to do a quick shout out. Karen, I'm glad you stopped by to watch us live today. David, Leopold is over on Facebook. Karen's on LinkedIn. So it's kind of cool. We've got our audience from everywhere. I am doing the best to watch the comments. I know I'm listening to Scott. I'm paying attention to what the clips are, but I am checking into that awesomeness of connection that we have in our live streams. And how cool is it that we can be on both platforms at once? By the way, we're also over live on YouTube. I can't have that many screens open or my computer will crash. And Scott can attest to that. It never fails. We've been doing this since Carter's like been 2. And oh man, can you believe that? He's 9 now. Over 7 years, Scott, we have been doing this. And the whole time I've had horrible internet. So I do have my physical limitations determined by the size of the pipe that my internet gets to my house in.
It's just like old times because I've just found that I can do one thing at a time, and I'm lucky to. And you can do 3 or 4 things at a time. So you've always been the one to be able to call out to those who are watching. But I welcome you and say hi to all of our friends as well.
Love it. Okay, shall we go on to the next one?
Well, the short answer to your question is yes.
I love that. I think that's great.
Well,
the short answer is yes. The longer answer is it seems like he's going to press some buttons so I can say something else. And at this moment in time, I want him to take this small snippet and share about the name change that we have coming up. The Bold Business Podcast is staying exactly as it is as we end season 3 in December and we take a break and we prepare for season 4 in 2021. The part that is changing is how we can serve you even more. There is going to be an add-on piece called the Fast Track Business Coaching Program. It is on demand. It is as you need it. It is what you want of searchable database of all of our programs in audio, video, and text. In addition to having cultivated playlists, in addition to being able to interact with the Jess and with the Jess. I am the Jess with me and the Red Direction team to get your business questions answered, in addition to a whole bunch of other perks. So the key being on demand as you need it, delivered to your inbox, delivered to your your podcast player of choice, because we will have all of that streamed just for you in a private feed, in addition to the True North dashboard that helps you get all the information you need when you need it for whatever problem you are facing and choosing to grapple with and work through in your business.
And here we go.
Who's next? Oh, Thomas Frey. Yeah, Thomas is a futurist. I want to pull this up for him. Here we go. Thomas is a futurist. He came, for those of you who are in the Denver area and were able to join me in a couple of different times. He came to one of our in-person events called the Growth Strategy Summit. And he was talking about future and future predictions. And, you either love him or you hate him, because either way, he is making you think, and he is looking at what's possible based off of what's happening today in a way that we forget to do sometimes within our business.
The types of credentialing, the types of things that we can put on our resume, that we can hang our hats on, all of those things are changing. This idea of status, there's a lot of things that are equal college degree, or some of them are better. So if I invent something, I get a patent, maybe that's worth the equivalent of a college degree. If it's a wildly successful invention, it could be far better. If I write a book, that might be the equivalent of a college degree. If it's a bestseller book, that might be way better. If I start a business, if I produce a game, if I produce a movie, there's all these things that we can do that are alternative paths to success that give us status in society, but they're not the methodical process laid out like a college degree. So that it's a messier path all around.
Be my middle name, but it's not. And actually, as he was talking about that, and I'm watching all of these clips, I'm like, the thing that stays the same, Scott, is my smile. That's about it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that, and so as I'm listening to what Thomas Frey, the founder of the Da Vinci Institute, where they are teaching people practical hands-on skills to go do the things that they want to do in this life, that sidestep a traditional path. And he's called a lot of things, and he's already said our education system is something that would experience change. And guess what? It is. Look at how colleges, look at how high schools are having to adapt and seeing where can they be creative and look at things a little differently. And of course that extends to beyond what our traditional path has been. If we're on a path where we have an entry level job and then we work hard and we negotiate our way into promotions and key projects and doing all of those things, or we go out and we have 2 or 3 jobs, or we go out and we start a business and we're running a small or medium sized enterprise with or without employees that we are in charge of. All of those things come down to, well, what path are we taking? And if we rely on paths that are known, it's great for a starting point of information. Yet, more than ever before, the concept of being willing to look at exactly where we're at, and what our big, hairy, audacious goal might be, and exactly what we can do with the resources we have to move toward it. It could be just a few steps, it could be great leaps, and still not quite get to our BHAG goal. That vision is so far out and has to be so big that we'll do whatever it takes and get excited to face those challenges to work along the way. And so that's one of the things that I take away when I hear Thomas Frey talk about the future is, wow, that future could be really scary. Wow, that future is different than I ever imagined. Wow, that future is filled with opportunity, provided I choose to see it. And then how do we show up today to move toward our own individual visions that make our communities better, stronger, and serve others, that allow us to not only be of service, but that others can invest in us for the service that we help them pay it forward. That that reciprocity is incredibly important. Giving is incredibly important. Being of service is incredibly important. Investing to continue to allow that to happen at a different pace, at a more amplified way, is also incredibly important to ensuring that we get to move forward. We're the rising tide that raises all ships, and we have space to congratulate each other, learn from each other, share with each other.
Yeah. So the fundamentals remain the same in the context of futurism. Maybe the fundamentals remain the same, but how we get there and the context within which we we fulfill the fundamentals that you were just talking about, Jess. And one way to look at it is that if there was someone who had the mindset of the 1930s, for example, and this was the 1960s, and the 1960s was a time of great, change, and we shifted from one thing to another, and they were in the 1930s. It's easy to look back and you could say, well, all of those are the companies and the organizations and the people, they fell by the wayside, and there was a new generation. And we could take a look at, the 1990s and the people who were stuck in the 1960s. They were left behind, and you had a whole new generation of not only the Amazons and the Microsofts of this world, but all of the trickle down, or the broadening of people who were in that environment. And we're seeing that things are happening faster and faster and faster. So what used to take 20 years took 10 years, took 5 years, and now we're having a churn that. So now we have a whole new generation of people who are coming up, and if they are hanging on to the way things were even 10 years ago, they're going to have issues and problems keeping up. And this coronavirus environment that we're in is just an accelerant, because it has changed the environment so much. We all need to communicate with each other, and maybe we need to have our special mentors or special coaches or something like that, so that we can keep up to date and stay a little bit in front of the curve instead of being left behind. What do you think, Jess?
Are we left behind, or are we on our own path? To the point of messiness, I'll tell you what, Scott. Just we're all on a different path, and I want to honor that, because everything you said is true, and we can have 10,000 or 10 million different paths happening at the same time. So it may be a wide spread, it could be a very narrow path that we are all on, but we're never taking each other's steps fully. Our situation is always going to be different. the things our business faces because of the people that we serve and then the niches that we have and the communities that we're a part of are going to be different than others. And it's important to recognize that in everything that you're saying as well.
Wow. Okay, we could I have a response to that, I'm sure, but I'm wondering if we want to go on to our next clip. What do you think? Should we?
Well, let's go. Let's go. Nadine.
Okay, so Nadine Hack.
Oh yes, that's right. Nadine, not Nadine, right?
Oh,
And I
my
love
bad.
that. No, it's okay. You said it right. It's people in the US say it different than people in Europe. And that was something that we talked about in the green room when she first came on, because I'm like, oh, I know a Nadine. And so great. Now she is an international speaker. She is an international presence. And one of the things that she is incredibly focused on is behaviors that we have in business. She has been ranked number one in executive education by the Financial Times and maintains her affiliation there. She is a thought leader on trustworthy business behavior. So that's how do we act with trust and authenticity as an individual, as a leadership and management team, and as a leadership and management team to the employees to each other, all the stakeholders, and all of the connections between them. I can't wait to hear which clip of hers you have picked today, Scott, randomly.
Okay, let's go.
The difference between what I call highly competent managers and truly great leaders is the level of self-awareness, the willingness to look inside and acknowledge and own the good, the bad, the ugly. What some people call embracing the shadow self. Doing that, makes us so much more holistically intelligent, not just IQ, EQ, emotional intelligence, LQ, learning intelligence. It just allows us to ground.
Is the theme between these two. Messy, messy, messy. You know what? I find this fascinating because what if we prioritized messy? What if we prioritized emotion? What if we prioritized the pause to really listen and allow there to be gaps in conversation without a need to fill those gaps? How would that change our conversation? And I firmly believe in this concept of whatever the learning is, right? And she talks a lot about EQ and messiness and getting there and having space. And I'll tell you what, the things that allow us to go the fastest are because, sure, we're going to learn along the way and we're going to make a mistake once and learn from it and keep going. Those of us that can actually make mistakes that continuously move us forward are the ones that have taken time to plan at the beginning. They have taken space to hear, to listen, to consider as a decision is being made.
My turn?
It is.
Okay. Well, the theme seems to be personal development, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. There's a lot of that in this. And to make change, we have to hold up our mirror first.
So that might be under the general category of best practices, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And lots of different ways to do that are things that we cover in this podcast. She talks about it specifically, hits the nail right on the head and talks about it. And then there's illustrations abound. I mean, just the last clip, totally different time frame, totally different program. Somewhere, in the queue, it keeps showing up, this concept of messiness, personal development, and it's okay. It is okay to mess up. It is okay to need more time. We just have to, and I keep saying have to in this one, to be successful, we must allow for the time. And so if we pack our time too tight or we have to-do lists too long, there's not room for messy. And that puts a hindrance on everything because it's in the messy that we create better connection. It's in the messy we find the $1,000,000 ideas. It's in the messy that we really get to understand where the rubber meets the road.
So, what's the difference between messy and brainstorming?
Well, they're different purposes. Messy is like showing up to it, and brainstorming is an activity that you can do that is messy.
Okay, so one is a subset of the other.
I would say, yeah. Yeah. And data collection, brainstorming is part of data collection. There's an evaluation process in that as well. But let's say, I mean, how about this? The first time you get a group of people, there are these dynamics that humans have. Who's got the authority? Who can establish the authority? What kind of ideas are there? Who's the smartest in the room? Who's the most caring in the room, right? We have all of these things that are going on that we're not consciously thinking about that are actually happening. And so when you bring a group together to brainstorm for the first time, it's messy because there has to be here it is again. I don't know why it has to all the time, but there's an element of we're showing up with these preconceived things of, well, how's this brainstorming going to go? And we must check our assumptions. We must check, what do we want to judge? Are the words we saying actually accepting? Because every idea in a brainstorming session is welcome. Or are we actually judging some of them out before the brainstorming is actually over? I mean, those are the types of things that are messy. So even within brainstorming, we have to work through that element of, how are we going to show up? What kind of respect are we going to have? Can we understand what the ground rules are so that we can get to the nut of what's actually happening at each stage of the process?
Okay, one last question, and then we'll wrap it up for the for this session. What about comparing and contrasting diversity with messiness?
Well, hello. You know what? I'm so glad Karen actually stopped by. I wish it was in the room. It's not. It's in my reading chair, my yellow chair that is way back from the Just Plus Scott show days. Is not in my office anymore. We have a little reading room in the front of our house, and sits in the sunshine. Yellow chair for a yellow puddle of sunshine. It's fantastic. Total sidetrack. I'm reading this book called The 4-Minute Cell. It was written in 1984, and I know it came from Karen because she gifted me so many books, and you open it up and it still had her address when she did not live in Colorado in it. And so I'm thinking this will be so great because we can glean information anywhere. The 4-Minute Cell is actually about that nonverbal communication. And they talk about 9 things, which I will not remember them all. 9 things that are happening to us in every situation that we're showing up in. And we as individuals must recognize the audience that we will be in front of, because if we're different, there will be characteristics and automatic things that happen, and that it's up to us to show up authentically and butt up against that a little. And so for those, oh, you accidentally hit on a soapbox. I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole. So that's part of it. And then, so when we think about diversity, I can tell you, for like the Colorado Women's Education Foundation, I raise money to send non-traditionally aged women back to school, and I'm part of a fabulous group of people. The women we serve in that group are not representative of the board that we have. So we have a conscious effort going on to make sure that that we are recruiting people to be part of the board that better represents the people that we serve, so that we can bring that together. It's a conscious effort, and we talk about it and we seek it out and we're looking for it, which can be messy because we have to say, wow, we're all the same in these ways, and wow, we're missing some really key differences over here that we'd like to include. And we're still working with what we have, though. So how do we do that? And recognizing that is a good first step. Having that and taking the actions to increase the diversity for what we want, so that our management team better reflects the way our company is. The people in our company are represented in a certain way, and sometimes that can happen and sometimes that can't, and we're in that weird messy place, again messy, where what we want and what we have and not knowing how to get there and being worried about the challenges we're going to face and the mistakes we might make along the way prevent us from going forward sometimes. And so it takes a little bit of courage to say, I want more diversity. I want different opinions included. Here's where we can actually do that today. And are we willing to mess up? And whatever messing up looks like, and whatever judgment or ridicule or something else that might come of that, for our companies to be better positioned, to be more adaptive and more resilient than ever before.
And at the end of the day, after the, you've got the messiness, you've got the diversity, and then there's leadership that brings it all together so that everyone ends up on the same page. And then maybe there are cycles, or maybe it's not that there's ever an ending, but there's an evolution.
You make a good point, Scott, that it doesn't end, because by the time you get to the goal of whatever your diversity goals are now, they're going to be different, because you're right. Everything is always evolving.
And on that, I think that might be a good note to start to say goodbye to everyone who's listening and are watching. So, and I'm going to leave that to you. How can people find out a little bit more about Just Duel and what you do?
Oh, well, the podcast is a great place to start. The Bold Business Podcast. Go search for that at your favorite listening platform. And whether you're on YouTube, well, maybe YouTube we're working on. I'll be real. This is a place we can improve on, and I'm very transparent about some of those things. LinkedIn and Facebook, we are always posting content and updates not only about what is going on in the greater world for resources, sharing the goodness and the tidbits and the information that we get from the guests that have been and will be on our program, both in the social media realm, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, it's there. Go to reddirection.com. Check out the podcast. Check out and subscribe, because it's quick. Everything is right there. Most importantly, just see what other services are there and all of the resources that are available to you for free today are immensely useful to whatever you're facing. So do a quick search, get a couple of ideas, and go and work on that problem that you have. And don't forget, you can always reach out to us at Red Direction by sending us an email to radio@reddirection, by direct messaging me or tagging me somewhere in a conversation out in social media. And our phone number's on the website. You could do that too.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll give you the microphone back so you can, and then we'll we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.